You've been lied to. They told you women want a strong, successful, visionary man. But here's the brutal truth: most women don't want a great man, they want a safe one. In this video, we reveal the hidden cost of ambition, power, purpose, and why the path to greatness almost always leads away from love. If you've ever wondered why you feel alone in your pursuit, this will explain everything. Greatness is not merely a matter of skill or strength. It is a condition of the soul that sets a man apart from others. The truly great man walks a road that is not only narrow but also lonely. His mind does not function like the common man's. While others dwell on comfort, fleeting pleasures, or the validation of the crowd, he is obsessed with conquest. Be it of land, ideas, legacy, or self. His eyes are not fixed on what surrounds him today, but on what is yet to exist. This psychological orientation toward the future, toward the vast and the impossible, inherently makes him incomprehensible to the average person, and especially to the average woman, whose nature, through evolution and biology, is wired not for war, but for preservation. The woman wants a nest, not a battlefield. She seeks the rhythm of stability, not the chaos of ambition. The very qualities that define greatness: risk-taking, long solitude, unrelenting vision, emotional detachment, the capacity for violence, are often diametrically opposed to what women instinctively desire. When she says she wants a strong man, what she truly means is a stable one. A man who comes home at night, who is emotionally available, who listens, who puts her in the relationship at the center of his life. But the great man cannot do that. He does not return home when expected. He disappears into the wilderness of his goals, his obsessions, his strategy. His love is not her priority, and he knows it. Even if he tries to love, the relationship is always unequal. She desires to possess him, to have him submit. If not in power, then in emotional attention. The great man is unpossessable. His heart belongs to something higher than her, to an empire, to a vision, to his destiny. She begins to feel abandoned, even if he is physically present, because he is never really there. His mind is on the next campaign, the next plan, the next level of his own evolution. And though she may admire him in the beginning, enthralled by his force, charisma, and intensity, eventually, admiration turns to resentment. She begins to question why he can't just be normal, why he doesn't settle, why he isn't soft like the others. The truth is, he can't be. His greatness forbids it. He was not made for normalcy, for domesticity, for predictability. And so, he begins to feel the curse of his own path, that he is loved in the abstract, feared in the personal, and ultimately, left. Not because he failed her, but because he refused to fail himself. This is the price of being consumed by purpose. In times of old, the great man was surrounded by soldiers, not comfort. Strategy, not affection. He did not speak in flowery words. He commanded. He did not sit by the fire and tell stories. He made them, and such men rarely found women who could follow them into that fire. Most turned away, preferring the embrace of a more familiar man. One who loved slowly, who stayed home, who made no enemies. A man without a mission, perhaps, but with open arms. Women have always gravitated toward this kind of man when they seek emotional safety. But the great man is a storm, not a shelter. He does not offer calm. He is disruption itself, divine chaos given form. The world needs such men, but women rarely do. Not in the way they say they do, because deep down, they know what such a man brings: change. And with change comes fear. The man who builds empires threatens the status quo, not just politically, but emotionally, sexually, spiritually. He demands transformation from everything and everyone around him. He makes people face truths they'd rather avoid. He brings discomfort, and in doing so, he becomes alone. Even in relationships, he is misunderstood. He may be physically attractive, mentally sharp, even capable of great tenderness. But he never fully gives himself. Not because he doesn't feel, but because he has trained himself not to need. Women interpret this as coldness, but it is discipline. He knows that attachment weakens the sword, that excessive emotional investment breeds vulnerability. And for the man who intends to carve a legacy into the spine of the earth, vulnerability is death, so he remains distant. Not emotionally dead, but emotionally reserved. Strategic in love just as in war, and most women can't stand it. They mistake his intensity for aggression, his silence for indifference, his focus for arrogance. They crave the illusion of partnership. But the great man is already partnered with something far more demanding: history. Even when women try to love him, they begin to feel secondary, because they are. Not due to cruelty, but design. The great man's hierarchy is clear: purpose first, self-mastery second, legacy third, and love, if it fits, last. This is not a rejection of love, but a prioritization of eternity over immediacy. The very framework that makes him exceptional in the world makes him incompatible in romance. The average woman, whether she admits it or not, is not drawn to glory. She is drawn to certainty. She wants stability, not revolution. What excites her in fantasy often terrifies her in reality. The image of the powerful man, the conqueror, the visionary. Yes, it seduces the imagination. But when confronted with the flesh and blood version of that man, all his intensity, unpredictability, and emotional detachment, she recoils. Because greatness, real greatness, disrupts the equilibrium of life. It creates storms where she seeks calm. It builds empires while she wants to build a home. At her core, a woman is wired to seek protection, not necessarily physical safety alone, but emotional reliability, consistency, and groundedness. These qualities are rarely present in men who are truly committed to greatness. Such men are transient in spirit. They are obsessed with the future, dissatisfied with the present, and relentless in motion. The great man is not interested in nesting. He is interested in ascending. And for the woman whose primary drive is to find a place of security, the great man becomes not a dream, but a threat. She may admire his ambition, but she will resent the sacrifices it demands. She will admire his focus, but soon complain of his emotional absence. She will be drawn to his strength, grow bitter over his refusal to submit to her emotional needs. The tension lies in a deep biological truth. Where he is designed to expand, she is designed to preserve. Where he must destroy to create, she must maintain to nurture. Their instincts are not wrong, but they are often incompatible. Most women do not want to follow a man into the wild unknown of greatness. They want a man who leads them somewhere safe, warm, and predictable. And yet, society tells men the lie: be great, and the women will follow. It is not always true. Be great, and many will notice you. They will be drawn to your aura, your power, your refusal to bend. But notice this: they admire from afar. They fantasize, yes, but when it comes time to walk beside you, to actually integrate into your path, they will flinch. They will say you are too busy, too intense, too focused, too much. What they truly mean is too uncertain. Greatness brings with it chaos. It is built through risk. The man who pursues glory must, at times, vanish from the lives of those around him. He must disappear into his craft, his vision, his discipline. This disappearance is interpreted by most women as neglect, as rejection, as emotional coldness. They cannot see that it is in fact devotion. Not to her, but to the calling that shaped him. This is why the world is filled with stories of great men who were betrayed, abandoned, or sabotaged by those closest to them. It is not that these men were unworthy of love. It is that the love they needed could not coexist with the magnitude of their mission. When the average woman sees her man drifting into obsession, into silence, into focus, she interprets it as distance. But the great man knows that without that very focus, he is nothing. He cannot divide himself equally between comfort and conquest. The road to glory does not have rest stops. There is a paradox: the very traits that make a man exceptional are the same traits that isolate him. His discipline becomes a wall. His ambition, a wedge. His refusal to settle, an insult to her need for rootedness. And so, most women do not want him. They want the idea of him, the aesthetic, the image, but not the reality. Because the reality requires suffering. It requires patience. It demands that she place second to something she cannot control or fully understand. She may try to tame him, to soften his edges, to pull him back into the warmth of normalcy. And if he lets her, he dies. Not physically, but spiritually. He becomes a man who once dreamed but now complies. He trades glory for affection, and soon she loses respect for him anyway. Because no woman respects a man who gives up his essence for her. She may appreciate the gesture, but deep down she knows he is no longer who he was, and who he was the only reason she noticed him to begin with. So the great man must choose, not between love and loneliness, but between security and truth. If he seeks to be embraced, he will be tamed. If he seeks to be understood, he will be diminished. Most women do not want to orbit a sun. that burns too brightly. They want the candle, warm, familiar. The sun blinds, the sun burns. The sun reminds them that its light is not for them alone. And this is what most cannot bear. They say they want a man who leads. But they do not mean into the unknown. They mean into the house, into the ceremony, into the rituals of ordinary life. They do not want the man who disappears into the battlefield of his mind, returning days or weeks later with wisdom carved into his silence. They want the man who comes home at 6, who eats what they cook, who listens when they speak, and who never strays too far from their emotional reach. Glory is not a shared destination. It is a solitary ascent. And while many women may cheer the great man on from the base of the mountain, few are willing to climb alongside him into the snow and wind. The contradiction between love and greatness is not accidental. It is elemental. Love, in its purest form, asks a man to soften, to be still, to make space for another. It requires compromise, predictability, emotional presence. It thrives in the repetition of daily rituals, in the gentle rhythm of companionship. Love, as most people understand it, is the taming of a man's wildness. It is the slow breaking down of his edges, the smoothing of his fire into warmth. It is the architecture of peace. But greatness does not come from peace, it comes from pressure, disruption, and disobedience. It demands not softness, but savagery, not calm, but chaos. It does not ask to be tamed. It demands to be unleashed. The man who desires to achieve true greatness must accept that he cannot be domesticated. The very spirit within him that cries out to conquer, to create, to dominate, to ascend, that spirit is incompatible with the emotional stability that love, in its typical form, requires. To love deeply, a man must be open, vulnerable, and emotionally available. He must give his time, his attention, and above all, his emotional reliability. These are noble things, but they come at a cost. Because the great man does not possess himself in these ways, he is ruled by his mission, not by his moods. He follows the call of his destiny, not the comfort of his feelings. When a man begins to love, he begins to bend, not because he is weak, but because love demands it. He begins to prioritize the happiness of another. He becomes concerned with how his actions affect someone else. He becomes cautious, considerate, and less impulsive. This is good for relationships, but it is fatal for greatness, because greatness thrives on risk, on carelessness in the eyes of the world, on obsession that borders on madness. The great man must be willing to burn everything to achieve his vision. He must be willing to disappoint others, to disappear when needed, to destroy the very things that make most people feel alive, including love. Women, consciously or not, seek to mold a man into someone they can predict. They ask him to open up, to express himself, to include them in his inner world. The great man knows that some parts of himself must remain untouchable. Not out of pride, but out of necessity. His vision lives in a place where words do not go. His focus must remain sacred, undistracted, and pure. If he allows too much softness, too much attachment, it will dilute his fire. It will weaken his aim. And even if she does not intend to pull him off his path, the nature of love is such that it asks for a piece of him, a piece he cannot give if he intends to become immortal in his work. Love also seeks harmony, but greatness thrives on imbalance. The man who becomes great often lives out of proportion. He neglects the social, the emotional, even the physical at times. He sacrifices sleep, stability, relationships. He becomes monomaniacal, fixated, untouchable. This level of obsession is frightening to most people, and it is especially unsettling to most women. Not because they lack strength, but because they instinctively feel what this means, that they will always come second. That they will never be enough to distract him from himself. That his soul is not truly theirs. It belongs to the fire. There is also a deeper truth. Women want to be loved completely. They want to be the center of a man's world. They want to feel that they are his purpose. But the great man cannot lie. His purpose is not her. His purpose is his mission. He may love her, but never above his path. And that is a hard truth for most to accept, because love, as most understand it, is mutual worship. But the great man worships only one thing: the future he intends to build. This creates a tension. She begins to feel unimportant. She may not say it directly, but she feels it when he forgets birthdays, when he's silent during dinner, when his eyes wander to the horizon even while she speaks. She begins to question his commitment. she asks for more. And the moment he gives it, he begins to unravel. Because to give her what she wants, he must betray what he is. He must slow down, pull back, be present. He must trade the infinite for the intimate. And when he does, he no longer burns the same. His edge dulls. His hunger softens. He begins to compromise, not just with her, but with himself. What most do not understand is that the great man is not driven by ambition alone. He is driven by necessity. His pursuit is not a choice, it is a compulsion. To stop is to suffocate. To tame himself for love would be to betray the fire that keeps him alive. And though the world may not understand it, though women may walk away from him because of it, he knows he must continue. Because greatness is not a path of comfort, it is a war. And love, in the traditional sense, is peace. A beautiful, seductive peace. But a peace that asks for parts of him he cannot afford to give. There is a silent confusion in the way people perceive greatness, particularly the way women perceive great men. They admire them, yes. They speak their names with fascination, they repost their quotes, they marvel at their accomplishments. But admiration is not love. Admiration is not devotion. Admiration is distant, impersonal, often abstract. It's a kind of worship that requires no sacrifice, no closeness, no understanding. Women admire great men the same way they admire storms from the safety of their windows, awed by the spectacle, but terrified of what it would mean to step into the center of it. This is why so many great men live lives of isolation, misunderstood even by those who claim to love them. A woman may be drawn to a great man's strength, his confidence, his unwavering discipline. She may even be swept off her feet by his intensity, his refusal to conform, his boldness in the face of mediocrity. But when the moment comes to truly accept him, not the public version, not the legend, but the man behind the fire, she will often flinch, because behind that greatness lies something most cannot bear: loneliness, obsession, sacrifice, and silence. To accept a great man is to accept being second to something greater than herself. It is to accept that his soul does not belong to her, and never will. His heart, his attention, his time, these things are governed by his vision. She may ask for more of him, and he may give it temporarily, but it will never last. His eyes will always return to the horizon, his thoughts will always drift back to his mission. He will always be elsewhere, even when he's physically present. And for most women, this creates a silent resentment, not because they do not admire him, but because admiration without ownership is intolerable. The truth is brutal. Most women do not want to coexist with greatness. They want to consume it. They want the great man to turn his gaze toward them fully, to melt into their love, to rest in their arms. But the great man does not rest. He does not pause. His love burns differently. It is not safe, not soft, not easily defined. It is a love that exists in movement, in struggle, in silence. A love that is expressed through his actions in the world, not through constant emotional validation. And this kind of love confuses most. They mistake his detachment for coldness, his focus for neglect, his intensity for arrogance. They begin to believe he is incapable of love, when in truth, he simply does not love in the way they expect. This misunderstanding is dangerous, because it creates a cycle. Women are drawn to his power, but then try to reshape it into something familiar. They try to domesticate it, to mold it into something emotionally manageable. They want the lion, but they want it to behave like a house cat. And when it refuses, when it continues to roar and prowl and disappear into the wilderness, they feel betrayed. They feel unloved. It is not betrayal. It is consistency. He never pretended to be anyone else. There is also a deeper layer to this dynamic. Women often speak of wanting a man with purpose, a man on a mission. But they rarely understand what that actually entails. A man who is truly on a mission will not be emotionally available in the way most women expect. He will not share every thought. He will not be easily accessible. His moods will be shaped by the battles he fights, not by the dynamics of his relationship. He will carry wounds that he will never explain. He will be haunted by ideas, obsessed with future plans, driven by demons he never speaks of. To live beside such a man is not to live in comfort. It is to live in awe, and sometimes in fear. Acceptance means allowing the great man to be who he is without interruption, without needing to reshape, question, or soften him. It means honoring the silence, not filling it, standing beside him, not in front of him. It is rare because it requires a kind of selflessness and strength that society does not teach. It means giving up the fantasy of emotional ownership and embracing a more brutal reality, that the great man does not belong to her or to anyone. He belongs to the fire. This is why history is littered with stories of women who left great men, or worse, who stayed and tried to extinguish the flame. They thought they could handle the brilliance. They thought they could endure the solitude, the obsession, the emotional distance. But in time, the weight of it became too much. They wanted love to feel familiar. But greatness is not familiar, it is foreign. It demands a different kind of devotion, one that most are not prepared to give. They admired the man from afar, but when invited into his world, they realized they could not live inside the storm. And this is the final distinction. Admiration is passive. It costs nothing. But acceptance, true acceptance, demands sacrifice. It demands the surrender of comfort, the tolerance of absence, the embracing of something vast and unknowable. Very few can love a great man for what he truly is. Fewer still can stay, because to stay means to face a mirror that reflects not only his power, but their own limits. The world sings praises of greatness. Few truly grasp its cost. Fewer still can stand beside it without trembling. We are told that every man should rise, conquer, create, and leave his mark upon the earth. But we are never told what must be lost in the process. The truth is harsh. Most people, especially most women, do not want the man who is truly destined for greatness. They want the idea of him. They want his strength without his solitude, his power without his distance, his fire without its burn. But the great man cannot split himself in half. He cannot dim his light to make others comfortable. He cannot choose love over mission, because to betray his mission is to kill the very force that makes him who he is. He walks a narrow path, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. And along that path, admiration will follow him like an echo, but acceptance will remain rare, perhaps even impossible. Greatness, in the end, is a lonely throne, not because the man is unloving, but because the world rarely knows how to love what cannot be tamed. Most do not want a great man, they want a safe one, and safety has never made history.